So we have gathered here for a discourse on the teaching of the Buddha, and the text we are going to use is Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, or Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. So the first 4 chapters have been taught last year. Now, so this time we're going to start from chapter 5, regarding alertness. So first of all, as there are many who are new to my teaching, I'd like to give a general introduction to Buddhism. Loud. No. So it's going to be simultaneous translation. So this is a blessing for the tea. The qualities of the Buddhas and Dhamma and Sangha are inconceivable, and I make this offering to these objects of not refuge who are inconceivable. So while you take your tea and bread, I will continue teaching. So Buddhism originated in India over 2,500, nearly 2,600 years ago, when the Buddha gave the sermons. So now we are in the 21st century. So in the last 2,000 to 3,000 years, there have been many different religious traditions, the major religious traditions, many of which exist even today in this world, serving many people, giving them hope. So religion, generally, is a means by which human beings, when they meet with problems and difficulties, the religions become something source of hope. And therefore, in the religions, there is a mention of a higher being who the followers take refuge in, who are greater than the followers themselves. So within this, and the religions, there are those religions in which people sought a refuge in the spirits and others, believing that they will help them out of the problems and difficulties. Now, from amongst the different religions, those which have the philosophical background, not only so the oldest religious tradition with philosophical background may be Sankhya school within Hinduism. So this may have appeared around over 3,000 years ago. And similarly, in Egypt, there has been a religion which is over 4,000 years. And then in China also, there may have been some religious tradition that old. But most of the religions with philosophical background, I think, spread or evolved in India. And so amongst this, nearly 2,600 years ago, Buddhism appeared, and also Jainism, which was started by Mahavir, came into being in India. And then in Arab regions, the Judaism is Christianity, and Islam originated. And in ancient Iran, there was this religion called Persian religion, called Zoroastrianism. So today in India, all these major religions of the world exist. In India, there are homegrown religions, such as Sankhya school, and so from Sankhya down to Sankhya and other non-Buddhist traditions, as well as Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. So these religions are homegrown in India. And then Zoroastrianism, or Christianity, Judaism, Islam, these came from outside of India into India. And so, in other words, all these major religions of the world today exist in India. So if we do some analysis or investigation, the Parsi in India, the population of Parsis who follow Zoroastrianism is very small. So the population is very small. Maybe it's around 100,000 or 70,000 or so. But they live in India very peacefully, harmoniously, and nobody bullies them in India. But sometimes it so happens in India, because of authority, power struggle, and financial, economic struggle, then some problems happen here and there in India. But generally speaking, in India, all these major religious traditions of the world live very, really harmoniously. So although we are in the 21st century, but the major religious traditions, in spite of being in the 21st century, all these major religions of the world are helping people, humanity. So nearly 7 billion people in the world do not want, everyone is same in that no one wants suffering, but everyone wants happiness. So I usually say that I divide the 7 billion people in this world into 3 categories. One group is those believers in religion, and the second group do not believe in any religion, even say that religion is a means to exploit others. And then there is a third group, which is rather neutral to religion. They are not against religion. So of the 7 billion people in this world, the majority of the people, although there are people who claim themselves to be followers of this religion or that religion, but they are not really sincere about what these religions teach. So all these 3 groups of people are same in that they want happiness and not suffering. So if we investigate those who say that religion is no use, so amongst them, there are those who even while saying that religion is no use, they even don't pay attention to, they neglect the moral values as well, like love, compassion, honesty, and so forth. So when you live a life in that way, without believing in the moral principles, then you are not happy as well. And then amongst those followers, believers, for example, the followers of theistic religions, they would think that, of course, if I do something immoral, it is against the will of God. And therefore, they restrain themselves, refrain from committing non-virtuous actions or immorality. So all these major religions of the world teach us to be honest, to be loving and compassionate to others. And therefore, if you follow your own religion, whichever religion you're following, if you believe in it and practice them, then it seems those people are happier. I have friends who are Christians, Muslims and Jews. So I have very good, genuine practitioners of these religions who are my friends. So when you look at them, you find them to be very peaceful, calm, and even in the midst of troubles and difficulties, they are not moved so much or disturbed so much. So that shows that the religion helps them. So what is the purpose of religion? It is to give us happiness. So even Buddhism teaches us the means to reach higher rebirth which is a temporary goal, and then ultimate goal is that of nirvana, enlightenment, and enlightenment, Buddhahood. Now, in order to obtain a higher rebirth in the next life, what we need to do is we have to use this life properly, correctly, because this life that we have now as human beings is also a higher form of life. So having this form of life, if we live our life like animals, only indulging in all kinds of emotional reactions with attachment and anger, then it's no use. So you have to make a difference between you and animals to make this life a higher rebirth. So you should not indulge in rely only on the sensory perceptions, experiences that are derived from sensory perceptions alone, but you have to try to derive experiences based on the mind. So all these pains in the mind do not happen in the sensory perceptions, but it happens in the mind, the sixth sense. So what makes our mind unruly, undisciplined, and disturbed are those of attachment, hatred, and ignorance. So if you can actually use your mind to overcome these delusions, afflictive thoughts and emotions, then you'll make yourself rather better than animals. So the animals cannot use their mind much. They only rely on their sensory perceptions, more or less. And they can't make judgments using their mind. So with regard to the theistic religions, the followers of them should be, if they are compassionate and helping others, human beings, of course. And then in the next, after death, they talk about reaching heaven. So what this shows is that even their goal is happiness. So religions are meant for cultivating happiness. So with regard to happiness, there are many degrees, some immediate or temporary, and then the ultimate happiness. So since we have the wish to be happy, therefore we also have this aspiration to reach nirvana. Otherwise it cannot happen. So even animals try to avoid and be free from dangers and suffering. So because they know that suffering is not good for them, they try to avoid it or to overcome it. So this very life is also for happiness. So if there is somebody who is really unhappy and has lost all hope and very unhappy, so that's actually it's very negative to the person to shorten his or her life. And then there are people who take to drinking alcohol and drugs, and in the worst case scenario, people even go to the length of committing suicide. So we can say that this life is meant to live happily. So religion is meant for happiness, and also economic development and progress is meant for happiness. So we seek economic development, but not because the money is so dear and anything like that, but because we want happiness. And so, at the level of national level and on individual level, a family level, we all want happiness, and therefore we seek economic development and progress. And the material development also meant for that. So in today's world, where there is much material development and advancement, whether in community or at the level of individuals, someone may be very rich, but you can see them very unhappy. There are many people who are like that. If you have, when there is material advancements and you have lots of money, and if these could actually overcome our suffering, then it should be the case that the rich people do not have any suffering, but that's not the case at all. I have many friends who are very rich, extremely rich, but there are very unhappy people, full of worries, and they feel very lonely. Deep in their heart, they are very lonely. So even if you may be very rich, your riches cannot show you love. So since they cannot give you any love, you will not also feel love to them. So love has to come as an interaction between two beings, sentient beings who have mind. So with wealth, your love cannot actually increase. And therefore, people are only materialistic in their attitude. They also lose their love and compassion towards other beings, and other beings even appear to be their enemies, and therefore they remain lonely, and then they're very unhappy. So this is something we can see in today's world. And then amongst the scientists, neurobiologists, and medical scientists, see that if you are unhappy, then it also harms your physical health. Some scientists even say that people who always lie to others, they are full of stress, and because they are lying to others all the time, it makes them feel guilty, and then this gives them stress. So this is what some scientists say. So so 장부 장샤 인베는 지세랑서 셔도레스 디게 아니 소소 땡죄레 샤그레스 소소 이치 안 디게 아니 소소 셈슈 선다 쳐부치 하신 그레스 그래서 디 셈게 dro단도 차데고레스 저준 셰데비나 소소에 신난다 수이 농케 안 디게 콘도사야 소거든 주용해 샤그레스 So, the system of mind. Yeah, so this is what His Holiness already said. His Holiness read an article in which one scientist says that has written that people who lie all the time are full of stress, and people who are honest, they don't build up this stress within themselves. So this is true, actually. So if you tell a lie, maybe you'll be successful and be able to deceive somebody, but then in time you will also feel guilty and will always worry whether somebody would actually know that you are lying or you have lied. And so material development and progress alone cannot give you happiness. This is very clear in today's world. Even scientifically, it's very clear that you cannot overcome suffering by taking some medicine or drugs. So the most important thing to have good health is to have peace of mind. So scientists are not talking about next life or God or anything like that, but they are talking about having a healthy body, a good health in this life. For that, peace of mind is very essential. So human beings live in as social animals, where we depend on each other, one another. So there may be amongst animals, there may be few who live very in solitude. But then, when their time for mating comes, then they come together. But usually, they don't live in herds. There are some animals who live alone. But then, there are other animals like ants or bees, honeybees, and some other animals, wild animals, like monkeys. I mean, they live together in herds, in groups. So we human beings are also social animals because we live together in groups. So long as we have to live in a group, then the force that brings us together is mainly love or compassion, because we have to depend on one another biologically. So therefore, they live together by depending on each other. And so this is sustained by love, living together in groups. So if you build up animosity and don't like each other, then the group also disperses. So those social animals, they can live together because of love. So in order to live together, we have to be able to trust one another, and for that we need honesty. And therefore, what I'm saying is that now in this world, in today's world, people are beginning to become aware that peace of mind is very crucial for society. This is what people are able to see. So how do we cultivate this peace of mind? It cannot be done by operation or surgery, not by medication, and not by brainwashing others. Because if you do that, you'll be caught at one point for telling lies. So what we need is to know, to be aware of the reality, the truth. And then by knowing the reality, then you will be able to overcome your ignorance about it and then make transformation within yourself. So in modern education system, something is lacking, something is missing. This is not my not an idea that I alone have, but many scientists and many educators are aware that the modern system of education is oriented towards material development alone. which means seeking happiness only on the basis of material things and not using the mind to cultivate happiness, to cultivate peace of mind. And people even think that leave this to the religions alone. So there are many thinkers today who pay attention to cultivating peace of mind by using our mind itself and not relying only on material development. So therefore, in the 21st century, so we are in the beginning of the 21st century, a generation who live in this beginning of the 20th century. So if we do investigation, examination, there's hope that we could make this a different century.
This is simply beginning of 21st century. I think
들은 20세기 고도에 대한 것을
my intention is telling my generation, that means
And so, with regard to religion, so the religions teach how to develop or cultivate peace of mind. The theistic religions, the followers of the theistic religions believe in a God which is permanent, unitary, and self-evolved. So the reason why they see these things is that in order to have a single-pointed faith in the God, so if you have this single-pointed faith in God, for example, a Christian practitioner thinks that everything is in the hands of God, then the extreme self-centered attitude is reduced. So when you submit yourself completely to God, this extreme self-centered attitude is reduced. And then the message that these theistic religions give is to practice love, compassion, tolerance, and contentment. So all the religions teach these principles. So within religions, traditions, there are those of theistic and non-theistic religions. So amongst the non-theistic religions, there are those schools which believe in an Atma or a soul, which is to say a self which is permanent, single, and independent. But Buddhism does not believe in such a self. Buddhism doesn't believe in self or Atma, independent self. One time there was an interfaith meeting in Amritsar, in Punjab. At that meeting, one Sufi scholar, philosopher, was also there, and he said that all the religions answer, they try to find answer to three questions. First, the question is, what is self? And the second question is whether there's beginning to the self or not. And the third question is whether it has an end or not. Regarding the first question, what is self? The answer, except Buddhism, all the other religious traditions believe in a self or an Atma or a soul which is separate from the psychophysical aggregates. And this self or Atma is something which rules these psychophysical aggregates. So except Buddhism, the rest of the religions say this. Buddhism says that there is no self which is separate from the psychophysical aggregates, but the self is designated on the basis of the psychophysical aggregates. And therefore, since the psychophysical aggregates are changing, have the nature of changing, and therefore the self also changes. There is momentary parts to it. So when you answer this first question, you can categorize the religious traditions of the world into two groups. Buddhism, on the one hand, says there is no self which is separate from the body and mind, and the other religions say there is a self or an Atma or soul separate from the mind and body. And then regarding the second question, whether there's beginning to the self or not, those religions which, the theistic religions, according to them, there is a beginning because it starts as self or starts when God creates it. And then there are certain religions, non-Buddhist, and then Buddhism, which believe in past and future lives. So within this, again, there are some who say that everything is created by Brahma. But in Buddhism, when this question is asked, whether this is beginning to the self or not, to answer this, you first examine the body and the mind, the psychophysical aggregates, whether these have a beginning or not. And mainly, there is the mind. So, of these aggregates, the main thing is that of the mind, and you have to check whether the mind has a beginning or not. So if you were to posit a beginning to the mind, then you would have to actually say that the mind has come from something which is not mind, some kind of an inanimate thing. It's not possible for mind to have as its primary substantial cause something which is not mind. And also, mind cannot be a substantial cause of matter. Mind has the quality or of being clear and luminous or aware, and therefore is its substantial cause also, which has to be a mind, a consciousness, and therefore we can say that the mind does not have a beginning. So Dharmakirti says that something which is not mind cannot be a substantial cause of mind. And therefore, since the continuity of the mind has no beginning, therefore a self which is designated on that basis of the mind, on the basis of that mind, also cannot have beginning. So why that is so? The answer is its nature. So in Buddhism we talk about the four different reasonings. The reasoning of functionality of things, reasoning of dependency, reasoning of logical arguments. And so to have this latter one, we can use the idea of the functionality of things and the dependency of things. And so causes and conditions give rise to their effects. So the effects depend on their causes and conditions. So causes are said to be those which help, and the their effects are said to be those which are helped. So why does the mind have the nature of clarity and cognition? Is because it's nature. And similarly, we can talk about the different elements, water and so forth, being these different elements as by nature. So whether you talk about one kind of an element or a ram, like water or wind, they come together and then give rise to the effects. And so depending on these interaction between these, they give rise to different effects. So it's nature that the mind has its substantial cause, mind. And then why is there mind? It's nature. So for the followers of theistic religions, they would say that it's all because of God, that because God created them. But Buddhism uh, doesn't say that everything is in the hands of God. So in the Nalanda tradition of Buddhism, even the teaching of the Buddha, the words of the Buddha are examined and when some teaching of the Buddha is found to be not very literal, because it's against reason to accept what is taught, then they are interpreted otherwise. And the Buddha himself has actually said, monks and scholars, just as the gold is tested by goldsmith, by rubbing, cutting, and scorching, likewise you should examine my teaching, but not believe in it out of your devotion to me. So the Buddha himself has given us the liberty to check his teaching by using our mind, intelligence, reasoning, and experiment. And so, because the continuity of the mind has no beginning, therefore we say a self has no beginning. And then regarding the third question, whether it has an end or not, of course, within Buddhist philosophical thought, there are some who say that at the end, when you become an arhat and you die, the continuity of the mind ceases. But then Nagarjuna says that there is no powerful antidote or counter factor which can actually annihilate the mind completely. Of course, the material and the matters and the mind are opposite. But then, but if you were to say that at the end of your having after having attained arhatship, nirvana, and then when you die, if there's nothing left, then you would have to say that that which actually attained this nirvana without remainder is not there. When it's attained, the person is not there. So in other words, generally speaking, Buddhism does not believe in the end of a self. So the practice of love and compassion is there in all religions, but then it's when it comes to using religion, philosophical backing to this idea or the principle, we use reasoning in Buddhism. And after becoming enlightened, the Buddha gave his first sermon on the Four Noble Truths. And then when his teachings were compiled later, it was written mainly in Pali. The three Pitakas were written in Pali. So we have these three Pitakas, the three collections or the sets of teachings of the Buddha. The Abhidhamma, Vinaya, and Sutra in Pali. So Vinaya teaches the moral principles, and Abhidhamma teaches the development of wisdom, and then the Sutra teaches concentration. So after the death of the Buddha, within the development, with regard to the development of Buddhist institutions of learning, first there was Takshashila, which is now in Pakistan, Takshila, and then in the past, in the ancient times, Buddhism also spread in Afghanistan, and through the Silk Route, it also spread to China. And then after Takshashila or Takshila, then Buddhism actually spread in, flourished in Nalanda University, from where many most of the great masters of Buddhism actually were produced. So Nagarjuna, Sangha, and so forth came from that institution, Nalanda. So for several centuries, Nalanda produced these great scholars. So I have written a supplication to the 17 Nalanda masters. So all these masters have written the major classical texts, teaching the extensive and the profound paths. And then later, it also spread to Vikramalashil. And in Tibet, Buddhism was started by Master Shandarakshita, the great abbot. He gave the monastic vows, ordination, novice vows, and which pertains to the practice of the monastic discipline, the Vinaya. And also Shandarakshita took responsibility to the project of translating the Indian text into Tibetan. And then to support the Master Shandarakshita, Guru Padmasambhava came to Tibet to overcome the negative forces which were hindering the spread of the Dharma, Buddhism in Tibet. And then he also gave, Master Padmasambhava also gave tantric teachings to a very select few disciples, like the king, Chesong Detsen, and his ministers. But with regard to the general spread of the Buddhism, beginning with the Vinaya, Shandarakshita took the main responsibility. So he was a great master, great scholar from Nalanda University. And then after the 10th century, when Buddhism declined in Tibet, then the Master Atisha came to Tibet in the 10th or 11th century. And so, with regard to the Tibetan traditions of Buddhism, we have Nyingma, which started with Shandarakshita and Guru Padmasambhava, and then the new translation schools, like Kagyu, which started with Marpa Lotsawa, who studied under masters like Naropa, who was also from Nalanda University. And then we have Sakya tradition. The Sakya masters received teachings from Master Birwapa, who was also a master or scholar from the Nalanda University. So he was known as Dharmapala in Nalanda. And then with regard to Kadamb school of Buddhism in Tibet, it started with Atisha. And so all the different traditions of Tibetan Buddhism have their roots in Nalanda tradition. So in the Nalanda tradition, what we have is the teaching which were given by the Buddha in the first noble truth, Four Noble Truths, and then in the the Pranjaparamita teachings, what is emphasized is those of the cessation, the true cessation and true path. And so the teachings all comment on these. And then with regard to Nagarjuna, he was a monk of this Mula Sarvastivada tradition. He became a bhikshu in that tradition. And then he also studied the Mahayana sutras and wrote his commentaries to the teachings of the Buddha, and he was also a practitioner of bodhicitta. And then he also practiced the Tantra, mainly Guya Samaja Tantra. And with regard to his writing Bodhicitta Vivarana, he actually comments on some verse from Guya Samaja Tantra, root Tantra. The verse which begins with, from the Guya Samaja Tantra, the verse which begins with everything is void of entity and so forth. And then his main disciple, Aryadeva, also practiced and wrote many texts on Tantra. So from amongst the great Nalanda masters, the master who came to Tibet, the latest master who came to Tibet was, the last master who came to Tibet was Atisha. So he studied in Nalanda. And so it's very clear that the Tibetan Buddhist tradition actually follows is a pure tradition of the Nalanda tradition. So today there are people who make divisions within Buddhism, saying this Pali teaching, and then they also make division between Hinayana and Mahayana. So out of their ignorance they do this. And then people also say, make distinction or division of Vajrayana. So out of ignorance, people make these divisions. And in actuality, what we have to know is that we should have the Vinaya tradition, which comes from the Pali tradition, and then we add to these teachings the explications on the true cessation and true path from the Sanskrit tradition, which are found in the Sanskrit tradition. And then, when you practice them, then we have the Tantra. So within the followers of Tantra, within Tantra there is also this distinction between subtle and gross states of mind. And then because of that we also have the different sets of Tantra teachings. So we have to make the teachings that are found in the Pali tradition as a basic practice and add to that what is found in Mahayana and then Tantrayana. So apart from the basic, the fundamental teachings which are found in the Pali tradition and the Mahayana teachings, if you talk about Tantra, there is no way you can talk about it separately. So the teaching for today is amongst the writings of the masters of Nalanda cover the topics of the profound understanding of emptiness and the extensive practices, bodhisattvas. So the extensive teachings cover the 6 perfections and what does the profound teaching mean? It refers to the understanding of selflessness and cultivating wisdom, realizing that selflessness. So why do we have these two sets of practices or teachings? One extensive and the other profound. Because we need to make transformation within ourselves, and the main factor for making that transformation is our wisdom or intelligence, not only faith. So if you develop wisdom and your understanding, and then develop it further, enhance it, you need to put effort. Now, in order to put effort, we need to have aspiration and faith. So in order to overcome our delusions, afflictive thoughts and emotions, we need to develop wisdom, realizing emptiness. For that, we need to put effort, and therefore we need to have aspiration, and aspiration to reach enlightenment or nirvana by using our wisdom. And then, in order to reach Buddhahood, the full enlightenment or omniscient state, then we have to have wisdom and couple it with the bodhicitta, this altruistic aspiration. So a bodhisattva, someone who has this experience of bodhicitta, which is cultivated on the basis of love and compassion. A bodhisattva has these two things, wisdom and compassion. So with wisdom, they look up at enlightenment, and then they observe enlightenment, and with compassion, they observe sentient beings. So the term Changchup in Tibetan for enlightenment is made up of two syllables, Chang, which refers to purifying all negativities, and Chup refers to referring to having full knowledge of everything. And therefore, you think about reaching enlightenment or Buddhahood for the benefit of sentient beings. And therefore, your wisdom helps make transformation within yourself. And that transformation comes with this sense of wishing to help others out of suffering with compassion. So in order to reach Buddhahood, you have these two principles, the method and wisdom. Method referring to compassion and other perfections, and then wisdom referring to the wisdom realizing emptiness. So with these two combined together, by practicing these two in combination, you reach enlightenment. And then in Tantra, we talk about reaching Buddhahood by using the innate clay-light nature of the mind. And so you cannot actually divorce the practice of Mahayana and Tantrayana from the basic fundamental teachings. So to make transformation within our mind, we need to have the faith and wisdom, or the aspirational aspects of our mind, which refer to the sort of compassion and so forth, and then also the wisdom realizing emptiness. And as a result of practicing these, or cultivating these two principles within ourselves, we reach the two bodies, or Buddha bodies, which are the form body, which is meant for others, and then the Dharmakaya, which is meant for oneself. As Nagarjuna says, these two Buddha bodies, Dharmakaya and Rupakaya, come from the accumulation of merit and wisdom. So in order to be able to help others infinitely, limitlessly, or in other words, attaining the Rupakaya or the form of Buddha, we need to also have this Dharmakaya, which is also to be, which includes that of the omniscient state of the mind of a Buddha. So without this omniscient mind, you cannot actually help have the Dharmakaya, which is for one's own interest. And without this Dharmakaya, you cannot actually help others with Rupakaya. So what this shows is that things have to come from a result, or has to come from their causes and conditions. So since you need to have a body which is meant to help others, the cause for that is that of bodhicitta. And then in the Tantra, we also talk about the subtle wind energy for attaining the Buddha's form body. And then with regard to Dharmakaya, which is free from all kinds of reification, mental constructions, what we need to develop is wisdom, an experience where all the mental elaborations or reifications are overcome. And so a mind which is free from elaborations or free from all kinds of mental constructions at a trainee level becomes a substantial cause for the Buddha's Dharmakaya. And so the profundity of Tantra also has to be understood from the point of view of the collection of the two merits, merit and wisdom, where these two are not two separate entities, but of one nature. So we have to have the practice of bodhicitta, the extensive path, and then the profound understanding of the emptiness, which is the profound path. So these two are the main practices in the Nalanda tradition. Regarding myself, of course, I don't have the experience, but I still put effort in cultivating these two principles of understanding emptiness and bodhicitta. As soon as I wake up, I try to think or contemplate these two, and it's really helpful, it's beneficial. I'm same like you. We're all human beings. We don't want suffering, we want happiness, and we all have the same kinds of negative thoughts and emotions. So, since we are same in these respects, when someone like me finds some change within oneself by using one's mind, then you become happy, and this is what you gain. So, as Rinpoche says, Lama Tsongkhapa says, although you think of helping others rather than yourself alone, I mean, you are able to actually reap the harvest of goodness for yourself also. So if you could actually give thought to bodhicitta, of course Buddhahood is somewhere up there, it's rather distant from us, but by thinking and contemplating bodhicitta, this mind that we have now, which is full of negativity and we are full of fear, I mean, that they go away. So Endo yung siglas.
Again, this one, which one was? Okay. Chilo.
So we are all sentient beings. No one not such. The seventh Dalai Lama has said that we have all different appearances. We appear differently, but then if you look at anyone, oneself and others, we are all same. We all have the same kind of negative thoughts and emotions. So what gives us suffering is not outside, but it's within ourselves. So we have to be aware of it. And therefore, if we could actually achieve a peace of mind, it'll help. Even in this life, it'll help. No need to talk about the next life. So we're going to go through the text. So this text was said to have been written in the 8th century. So since it was since then, I think there's not been any greater text for cultivating for the practice of bodhicitta. And then it spread in India, and then in Tibet, all the different religious traditions, Sakya, Nyingma, Kagyu, Geluk. From these traditions, many masters have written commentaries to this text by Shantideva. So for training mind to cultivate bodhicitta, this text is the best. So the first chapter shows the benefits, the advantages of cultivating bodhicitta. So there are benefits or advantages of cultivating bodhicitta from the point of within the context of Buddhism, and also in general. So if you have this good heart, warm heart, then you will have a good health, and you'll live very peacefully, and mentally and physically. If you live full of fear and hopes, you will not be happy. Not to talk about the next life, but even this life, you will never be happy. You'll be full of superstitions, fear, and so forth, and you'll not be able to sleep well, or even if you take food, it will not be taste good. So if you have bodhicitta, it is, as said in the prayer of Maitreya, which says that I prostrate to bodhicitta, I pay homage to bodhicitta, which avoids the rebirth in the lower realms, and which leads you to the higher realms, and which leads to you to immortality. So if you have a warm heart towards others, compassion, love, then there's no room for you to think of harming others at all. So if you would be wise if you were to use the opportunity, which otherwise would give a chance for you to create negativity, to use that opportunity to cultivate positivity within yourself. I mean, you would be wise. So the practices of bodhisattvas are always pleasant. In one of the prayers it says, "May I engage in the very pleasant practices of bodhisattvas." this text by Shantideva also it says, which intelligent one would not ride the horse of bodhicitta, which leads one from bliss to bliss, without feeling any despondency. So the more calm and peaceful you are, the better you feel also physically, healthy. And so as Shantideva says in that prayer, when you make this determination and pledge to work for to reach the enlightenment for the benefit of others, and also vow to live in samsara as long as there is sentient beings, as long as space endures, and if you make that kind of prayer, and there's nothing that will disturb your peace of mind. So even if a non-believer, if they practice good heart, if they have warm heart, love and compassion, it will be good for them. They make this life meaningful. As we see in Buddhism, this higher rebirth is being made meaningful. So even if you have a human form, a human life, if you live like animals, it's not worth. If you live full of a life full of anger, attachment. So while you have this body, which is in the higher form of birth, and you should also make the mind a higher form of birth. And so the first chapter shows the benefit or advantage of bodhicitta. And then the second chapter shows the practice of confession. And then the third chapter shows how to embrace bodhicitta. And in order to keep the bodhisattva, the morality of bodhisattvas, then you have the fourth chapter and fifth chapter. The fourth chapter being the chapter on conscientiousness or vigilance, and then the fifth chapter guarding alertness or vigilance. So we'll stop here. We'll resume at 1 o'clock. And the teaching will go until 3 o'clock. And then, after my teaching, you also will have a review session, like holding a class. And you can also ask questions that you may have during the review session. So my teaching will finish at 3 o'clock. Then you may hold the review session at 3:30 and finishes at 4:30 or 5.